At 2:03 in the morning, Wade Wilson called his father and confessed to murder. One woman strangled in her sleep, the other beaten and run over more than 10 times. He said he felt nothing. He said he'd do it again. His father thought it was just another story, but by sunrise, 2 women were dead, and Wade Wilson was in handcuffs, smiling. It was just after 2 a.m. when Steven Testaseca's phone started ringing. The sound sliced through the silence of his modest Florida home. He reached over, barely awake, and checked the screen. Wade, his son. Steven sighed. Wade only called at this hour when something was wrong. He braced himself, expecting another complaint, maybe a drug-fueled ramble, or one of Wade's infamous stories. He picked up, but Wade's voice wasn't agitated. It wasn't panicked. It was calm. "I killed 2 people," Wade said. Steven sat up in bed, confused. "What the hell are you talking about?" Wade continued like it was nothing. He explained that one of them was asleep. He strangled her. The other woman tried to run, so he chased her down, beat her, and ran her over with a car. Not once, not twice, 10, maybe 20 times. Steven's wife, Lisa, had stirred awake. She looked over at him in the dark, sensing something was wrong. He put the phone on speaker, and Wade kept talking. He described how he used the first woman's car, said it made things easier, less evidence, less mess. He explained it all without a shred of emotion. "I'd do it again," he said. Lisa covered her mouth in shock. Steven froze. That was the moment he realized this wasn't just one of Wade's stories. This was real. He kept Wade talking, asking questions, buying time. He told his son he'd send him a ride. Wade said he was waiting at an abandoned house off Del Prado Boulevard in Cape Coral. He sounded tired, unbothered. Steven nodded and said, "Hang tight, I'll get you there." Then he called the police. While Wade sat waiting for what he thought was an Uber, officers from the Lee County Sheriff's Office moved quickly. They narrowed down the location based on what Steven relayed. It didn't take long. The house was dark, half boarded up, covered in overgrown weeds. Officers approached cautiously. Inside, they found Wade sitting calmly in a dusty room, still on the phone, still waiting. He didn't flinch when they entered. He didn't resist when they arrested him. As they cuffed him, he muttered, "Took you long enough?" News broke just after sunrise. 2 women had been found dead in Cape Coral, one strangled in her home, the other left in a field, her body crushed. A suspect was already in custody. His name, Wade Wilson. It didn't take long for the internet to latch onto the connection. Wade Wilson, the same name as Marvel's anti-hero Deadpool. That nickname stuck. The media loved it. The Deadpool Killer. But this wasn't a comic book. There were no punchlines, no redemption arc, just 2 women gone forever, and a man who seemed almost proud of it. Detectives began piecing together the timeline. Wade was seen at Buddha Ali, a popular bar in Fort Myers, just hours before the killings. Security footage showed him drinking and laughing with Christine Melton, a 35-year-old waitress. They left together after midnight. Hours later, Christine's body was found in her duplex. She had been strangled in her sleep. There were no signs of forced entry. Police believe she let him in willingly. Her cat was hiding under the bed. Wade then took Christine's car. Not long after, he crossed paths with Diane Ruiz, a 43-year-old bartender, mother of two. She was walking to work like she did every morning. Witnesses said a black car pulled up. A man asked for directions. Diane leaned in. He opened the door. She stepped inside. Minutes later, she was dead. Her body was found 3 days later in an empty lot. She had been beaten, strangled, and run over repeatedly. The medical examiner stopped counting at 10. Back at the station, Wade was indifferent. He sat through interrogation like he was bored. No emotion, no hesitation. He answered questions clearly, deliberately. He didn't express regret, didn't offer an apology. He just said the same thing. "I'd do it again." Detectives described him as cold, detached, like he was telling someone else's story. One officer said, "It felt like he wasn't even in the room." Wade was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, battery, grand theft, and several other felonies. He was placed in solitary confinement for his own safety, not because he asked, but because jail officials feared what he might do to other inmates, or to himself. In the days that followed, Stephen Testaseca gave a full statement to police. He replayed the phone call over and over in his mind. He told reporters, "Wade was always a good storyteller, but this one was real, and I'll live with that forever." The community was shaken. Both victims were well known, loved by their friends and co-workers. Candlelight vigils were held, social media flooded with heartbreak, with rage, and with one burning question: why? There was no clear motive, no history with the victims, no revenge, no robbery, just violence, just death. And a man who claimed he felt nothing. Wade Wilson was no longer just a troubled kid from Tallahassee. He was now the face on every news broadcast, every true crime blog, every whispered conversation in town. Not because he snapped, not because he had a psychotic break, but because he chose to kill and didn't care. His trial was months away, his sentence still unknown, but his fate was already in motion. It began with a phone call, and it ended with 2 women never going home again. Wade Wilson was not his real name. He was born Anthony, a child of children. His biological father was 15, and his mother was barely 14. They were too young to raise a child, too lost to know how. A few weeks after his birth in May 1994, Anthony was handed over to the state of Florida. Adopted by a couple in Tallahassee, Steve and Candace Wilson, he was given a new name, a new identity, a clean start: Wade Stephen Wilson. To outsiders, it looked like a happy ending. But inside the Wilson household, things weren't so clean. From his earliest years, Wade showed signs of emotional volatility. He was distant, moody, and quick to anger. By age 5, he had already been suspended from kindergarten for violent outbursts. Teachers described him as quiet but not shy. He didn't make friends. He didn't trust adults. He didn't seem to care. At home, he was a storm. He screamed, he broke things, he punched walls. He once tore apart a television remote and buried it in the backyard. His parents were confused. They wanted to help, but no amount of therapy, timeouts, or church youth groups seemed to fix the darkness growing inside him. Then came the concussions. Wade suffered his first major head injury at age 10. He crashed his bike into a parked car and was knocked unconscious. His parents rushed him to the ER. He recovered, but after that, something changed. He became more impulsive, more reckless. Over the next 7 years, he would suffer 3 more head injuries during a middle school fight, a car accident, and one incident that was never clearly explained. Some blamed his behavior on brain trauma. Others blamed his environment. But whatever the cause, Wade spiraled. By 12, he was stealing. By 14, he was using drugs. Weed turned into pills. Pills turned into meth. He dropped out of school and fell in with older kids, drug dealers, car thieves, petty criminals who took him in because he was useful and knew how to shut up. At 17, he was arrested for the first time. Burglary. He served just a few months but came out worse, more violent, more erratic. In 2015, at just 21 years old, he was charged with sexual battery and kidnapping. A woman claimed he attacked her in his car after a party. Wade denied it. He was acquitted. But his name stayed on the street. He liked it. He liked being feared. He liked that people crossed the street when they saw him coming. Between 2016 and 2019, Wade racked up charges like a trophy hunter, grand theft, battery, firearms possession, stalking, assault. He was in and out of jail, constantly bouncing between probation, halfway houses, and street couches. He called himself a ghost with a record. He told friends that laws didn't apply to him, that the world owed him. By 2018, his behavior turned darker. He started associating with prison gangs, particularly Unforgiven, Florida's largest white supremacist prison network. He wasn't in prison long, but he made connections. Swastikas appeared on his arms, then on his face. He shaved his head, his eyes grew cold, and then came the obsession with murder. He talked about killing people, randomly, without cause. He said it made him feel powerful, just talking about it. His ex-girlfriend told police that Wade once choked her until she blacked out. He said it was just to see how far she'd go. She filed charges, but they were dropped. Lack of evidence. Her word against his. Another broken woman. Another chance wasted. By mid-2019, Wade was out again, on probation, unsupervised, angry, and ready to unleash everything he'd been holding back. On October 7, 2019, Wade met Christine Melton at Buddha Yayav, a bar in Fort Myers. She was friendly, talkative, dressed up for the night. She liked live music. She had no idea who he really was. They drank, they laughed. They left together around 2 a.m. A few hours later, Christine was dead, strangled in her sleep in her Cape Coral duplex. Wade didn't stay long. He stole her car, drove across town, and began his hunt for victim number 2. Around 9 a.m., he saw Diane Ruiz walking to work. She was a bartender, mother of 2, and engaged to be married. She was also known for never missing a shift. Wade pulled up beside her. He asked for directions. She leaned in. He smiled. She stepped inside. She never got back out. He beat her, strangled her, and when she tried to crawl away, he ran her over, again and again, until she stopped moving. 3 days later, her body was found in a field. At the time of his arrest, Wade's criminal record was long, but no one had predicted this. No psychologist, no parole officer, no family member. They knew he was unstable, but they didn't know he was capable of this. His adoptive parents, Steve and Candace, sent a letter to the court months later during sentencing. Wade was a joyful child. He loved us, they wrote. But drugs, trauma, and mental illness stole that boy from us. We don't recognize what he became. His biological father, Stephen Testaseca, the same man who answered Wade's 2 a.m. confession call, testified in court. He said he hadn't spoken to Wade in years, that they were strangers, that the person on the phone that night sounded cold, like a man with nothing left to lose. I don't know if the system failed him, Stephen said, or if we all did. Wade's early life was filled with chances to change. There were warnings, flags, police reports, counseling sessions, medical charts full of red ink, but no one connected the dots in time. And on October 7, 2019, 2 women paid the price. Wade Wilson had transformed from an abandoned baby named Anthony into Florida's most infamous monster. By the time Wade Wilson stepped out of jail in the summer of 2019, he was a man with nothing to lose. He'd burned through nearly every second chance. Probation officers called him unpredictable. Former friends called him dangerous. His exes called him a monster. But Wade didn't care. He had stopped pretending. After years of bouncing between arrests, courtrooms, and halfway houses, Wade was once again a free man. But freedom didn't mean redemption. It meant opportunity. He was living in Fort Myers, Florida, and sleeping in borrowed rooms. No job, no purpose, just drugs and violence. The city was hot, restless, and Wade thrived in that heat. He said it made him feel alive. Meth had become his main source of power. It gave him energy, confidence, anger. His mind was already fractured. Drugs just ripped it further apart. Friends said he was up for days, walking around barefoot, muttering to himself, staring into mirrors like he saw someone else looking back. And when the high faded, something darker took over. On October 6th, 2019, Wade texted a friend, "I need to make noise soon. People forgot I'm dangerous." No one responded. That night, he walked into Buddha Sea, a bar known for its loud music and loose crowds. Wade had a few drinks, smoked something in the parking lot. Then he saw Christine Melton. She was 35, from Illinois originally. A waitress, funny, sharp, full of stories. She was dressed for a good time, not a bad ending. They talked. He charmed her, said all the right things. She invited him to tag along with her and a friend, Stephanie, to a friend's house, Jason Shepard's place. It was nothing unusual, just drinks, music, small talk. But to Wade, it was the beginning of something bigger. By morning, Christine was dead. After hours of drinking and socializing, Christine, Stephanie, and Wade went back to Christine's duplex. Stephanie left shortly after. Wade stayed. Christine fell asleep. That's when Wade made his move. He strangled her in her bed. There were signs of a brief struggle, but not much. The medical examiner later said she likely died in less than a minute. Wade stood over her body, then calmly walked into the kitchen, took her keys, walked out the door. It wasn't enough. Something in him had snapped, and it wasn't done breaking. Just hours later, he arrived at his girlfriend's place of work. He looked disheveled, high, twitchy, angry. He tried to pull her into Christine's stolen car. She resisted. He hit her, screamed at her, called her names that made no sense. She ran. He chased her briefly, but when she got away, he didn't follow. He had other plans. Driving down a Cape Coral street, he spotted a woman walking alone. Diane Ruiz, 43 years old, a bartender, a mother, engaged to be married. She was heading to work, her regular 10 a.m. shift at the Moose Lodge. She never missed a shift. Until that day, Wade pulled up in the car. He asked for directions. She leaned in. He smiled. She stepped inside. What happened next wasn't just murder. It was rage. Diane realized something was wrong almost immediately. She tried to get out of the car, but Wade grabbed her. He beat her, strangled her, then dragged her out. Somehow she was still alive. So he got back in the car and ran her over, again and again and again. The medical examiner couldn't tell how many times exactly. 10, 15, 20. Her injuries were catastrophic. Wade drove off and left her in an empty field. And that was it. 2 women gone in less than 10 hours. Later that day, he called his father. The same call that opened Chapter 1. The confession, the calm tone, the phrase, "I'd do it again." While Wade waited for what he thought was a ride, the police were closing in. The arrest happened quickly. No resistance. Just one final sentence from Wade. "Took you long enough." The city of Cape Coral was stunned. 2 murders in a single day. One victim crushed into the earth, the other found strangled in her bed. No clear motive, no warning signs the victims could have seen. Just a monster passing through. And yet, this wasn't a random explosion. It was the result of years of trauma, addiction, and neglect. The final consequence of letting someone fall through every crack in the system. Wade had tried therapy, jail, diversion programs, probation. Nothing worked. And now it was too late. Christine Melton's family described her as witty, kind, the type of person who made strangers feel like old friends. She loved Halloween, owned a cat. She was the godmother to her cousin's child. She was only 35. Diane Ruiz was hardworking, dependable, and protective. She was engaged to be married and adored by her co-workers. She never missed a single shift in 5 years, until the day she met Wade Wilson. She was 43. Their lives had nothing to do with Wade. They just happened to be in his path. When investigators began examining Wade's timeline, they realized how fast it all escalated. He had been arrested just months before, convicted of battery, released on probation. His behavior had become more erratic. He had no job, no supervision, no medication. His history of trauma, including 4 head injuries, was never fully addressed. His meth addiction was left untreated. And his white supremacist affiliations, most notably with the prison gang Unforgiven, were never officially tracked after his release. Wade was boiling, and on October 7, 2019, he exploded. At his first court hearing, he didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stared at the judge like it was a formality, like none of it mattered. His booking photo went viral. Tattoos, cold eyes, a half smile. The public dubbed him the Deadpool Killer. And suddenly, he wasn't just a suspect. He was a symbol of failure, of violence, of what happens when a broken system meets a broken man. The prosecution began building their case. The defense floated mental illness, brain injuries, drug psychosis, childhood trauma. But the facts were impossible to ignore. 2 murders, 1 day, 1 man, and a confession that left no room for doubt. The people of Cape Coral had one question. Why? Why would anyone do something so violent, so random? There was no money involved, no revenge, no heat of the moment passion. Wade Wilson didn't kill because he had to. He killed because he wanted to, and he said so over and over again. The courthouse in Lee County was packed on the first day of Wade Wilson's trial. Media vans lined the street. Reporters swarmed the front steps. True crime podcasters tweeted live from their car hoods. Inside, a man with a swastika under his eye prepared to fight for his life. It was June 2024. Nearly 5 years had passed since the murders of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz. For the families, those years were a blur of grief, press updates, and waiting. For Wade, they were years spent in solitary, planning escape attempts, smuggling drugs, and sketching tattoos across his face. By the time he walked into the courtroom, Wade didn't just look like a criminal. He looked like a warning sign. Defense attorneys requested he be allowed to cover his tattoos with makeup. The court allowed it, but the results were mixed. Even with a layer of concealer, you could still see parts of the swastika, the stitched lines under his eyes, and the S-bolts on his neck. Wade wore dress pants and a button-up shirt. His head was shaved. He looked controlled. But when he turned to the gallery and smirked at a camera, the room shifted. Everyone remembered who he really was. Jury selection was intense. Prosecutors asked potential jurors how they felt about the death penalty. The defense asked about trauma, abuse, and whether tattoos made someone guilty. 12 were chosen. 4 alternates. 2 were dismissed days later for unrelated issues. Opening statements laid it out clearly. The prosecution said, Wade Wilson murdered 2 women. He planned it. He confessed. He deserved death. The defense said Wade Wilson was a broken man. He had brain injuries, childhood trauma, drug addiction. He didn't need execution. He needed help. Then came the evidence. Christine's cousin testified. Diane's fiancé wept on the stand. Forensic experts explained the blunt force trauma, the tire marks, the bruising around the neck. Surveillance videos showed Wade with Christine the night she died. Phone records placed him at both crime scenes. The 911 call from his father sealed it. Stephen Testaseca stood before the jury and repeated the words his son had told him. I killed 2 people. 1 was moving, so I ran her over. Stephen said Wade sounded calm, cold. There was no remorse. The courtroom sat in silence. When the defense took the floor, they called neurologists, psychiatrists, experts who pointed to brain scans and behavioral charts. They said Wade's brain showed damage in areas tied to judgment and impulse control. that his past was filled with trauma, neglect, violence. But they couldn't explain why he kept saying he'd do it again. They couldn't explain why he smiled when he was arrested. Wade himself never testified. On June 12, 2024, after nearly 2 weeks of testimony, the jury returned their verdict: guilty on all counts. The sentencing phase came next. Florida law doesn't require a unanimous jury to recommend death. For Christine's murder, 9 jurors voted for execution. For Diane's, 10 on August 27, 2024, Judge Nicholas Thompson handed down the sentence: 2 counts of death for crimes that were cold, calculated, and cruel. Wade blinked, smiled again, said nothing. Outside, people cheered. Others protested. Online, supporters of Wade posted photos, set up fundraisers, even sold T-shirts with his mugshot. The prosecutor addressed it directly. This man is not an icon. He's a killer. He is not misunderstood. He is not wronged. He is dangerous. And today, justice was done. Wade Wilson was sent to death row at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. And for the first time in 5 years, the families of Christine and Diane exhaled. After his sentencing, Wade Wilson was no longer a suspect, no longer a defendant. He was an inmate on Florida's death row. But prison didn't quiet him. It didn't reform him. It didn't break him. It gave him something he had always craved: identity. Inside Union Correctional Institution, Wade didn't disappear. He got louder. Almost immediately, he began associating with members of Unforgiven, Florida's largest and most violent white supremacist prison gang. Unforgiven had a reputation: brutality, loyalty, a rigid code, and deep hatred for anyone who didn't fit their image of racial purity. Wade fit right in. He already had the look: tattoos, a shaved head, cold eyes. But Unforgiven wasn't just about appearance. They had rules, dues, rituals, a twisted brotherhood. To join and remain in the gang, you had to prove loyalty through acts of violence. Wade didn't hesitate. He began marking his body with more ink: swastikas, iron crosses, SS bolts. His face became a canvas of hate. Guards noted that his behavior became more aggressive, more calculated. He wasn't just another convict. He was becoming a figurehead. In early 2020, Wade and a cellmate were caught tampering with the window in their cell. Guards found the metal frame removed. The thick security glass cracked in several places. According to the warden's report, Wade had been orchestrating an escape attempt for weeks. He even tried to arrange a getaway car outside the prison through coded messages sent to a girlfriend. The attempt failed. Wade was charged with criminal mischief and attempted escape. But those charges wouldn't stick. In a plea deal made years later in 2024, they were dropped in exchange for a guilty plea on drug trafficking. Still, the escape plan revealed something more dangerous than desperation. It revealed organization. Investigators discovered Wade had ties to a larger drug smuggling operation inside the prison. He wasn't just using drugs. He was helping move them. In 2023, he was caught in possession of methamphetamine. A search of his cell revealed contraband phones, gang correspondence, and coded communications. Prosecutors charged him with trafficking meth and conspiracy. He pleaded no contest. His sentence, 12 years in prison, to be served concurrently with his death penalty. That same year, he overdosed. The incident nearly killed him. Guards found him unresponsive on the floor of his cell in Lee County Jail. Narcan was administered. He survived. The overdose sparked an internal investigation. 5 others were charged in connection to the drug ring. Wade, however, became even more infamous. Reporters started calling him the face of radicalization behind bars. He wasn't just a killer anymore. He was a symbol of what happens when hate finds a home in prison. Letters poured in, some from victims' families, pleading for his execution to be expedited. Others, disturbingly, from supporters. People fascinated by him. Women offering to marry him. Men asking for advice. Some called him a martyr for white resistance. Wade never responded publicly, but in private, he bragged about the attention. In one intercepted letter, he wrote, "I'm more alive in here than I ever was out there. Out there, nobody listened. In here, I'm a name." To prison officials, he was a headache. To society, a warning. To Unforgiven, an asset. Wade Wilson arrived at Union Correctional Institution just after 1:30 a.m. It was dark. It was quiet. The guards didn't say much. Neither did he. He was handed his uniform, inmate number assigned, fingerprints, intake photo. He looked into the camera and smirked like it was a joke only he understood. Wade Wilson, now officially a death row inmate, had reached the end of the line. But it didn't feel like the end. For many inmates, death row is where noise dies. No media, no attention, no purpose. But Wade wasn't like most. In prison, he'd become something else. A figure, a story, a symbol. Online, forums lit up. #Deadpool Killer started trending again. Some users condemned him, others idolized him. A woman in Texas claimed he was her soulmate. A man in Tennessee tattooed Wade's face on his chest. Facebook groups began sharing free Wade graphics. It was the same story that plays out with every infamous killer. Society couldn't look away. His fan mail grew each month. Some letters came from people who wanted answers. Others wanted autographs. Many were just obsessed. Psychologists call it hybristophilia, the attraction to people who commit violent crimes. For Wade, it was validation. He'd always wanted to be seen. And now, from a concrete cell, he was more visible than ever. But not everyone was mesmerized. At every court appeal, the families of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz showed up. They wore shirts with their loved ones' names. They spoke to reporters. They reminded the world who the true victims were. Christine's cousin said, "People send him fan mail. My family sends flowers to a grave." Diane's fiancé added, "He brags. She's gone." The Florida Attorney General's office confirmed that Wade's automatic appeals had begun. His case would go to the Florida Supreme Court. After that, possibly the U.S. Supreme Court. He had the right to fight his sentence, even if everyone knew how it would end. Statistically, inmates sit on death row for decades. Some die of natural causes before their execution ever arrives. In the meantime, Wade waited. He read. He wrote. He lifted weights. He smiled for the cameras when guards weren't looking. Reporters kept requesting interviews. He declined. Not because he was shy, he wanted mystery. To his fans, silence made him more powerful. To the public, it made him more unnerving. To the families, it was exhausting. On August 29, 2024, just 2 days after his sentencing, Wade returned to court for unrelated drug and escape charges. He wore the same smirk, pled no contest, received another 12 years. It didn't matter. That sentence would never outlive the other one. Inside death row, Wade was a strange figure, not feared, not respected, just watched. Other inmates avoided him, not because of his violence, but because of his need for attention. They said he'd talk to himself, laugh at nothing, flex in front of the mirror like he was on stay, the warden once said. He's not crazy, he's just empty. It's like he's trying to prove to himself that he matters. As the years passed, some of the buzz died down, the hashtags faded. The letters slowed. Another mass killer would steal the headlines. Another case would dominate the news. But Wade Wilson remained, sitting in a 6-by-9-foot cell surrounded by steel and silence. He never apologized, never asked for forgiveness. He once told a prison nurse, "They'll never forget me. That's better than any prayer." And maybe that was the real motive all along. Not rage, not ideology, not impulse, just fame. A twisted kind, the kind built on blood. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.